The US-China tariff war began with a sense of unfairness in global trade. American leaders watched as manufacturing jobs vanished, factories closed, and work moved to China for cheaper labor. Frustration grew as Washington accused China of stealing technology and forcing US companies to share secrets. The US aimed to correct this imbalance and restore fairness. The massive trade deficit, buying far more from China than selling, was seen as proof of a one-sided relationship. Tariffs were introduced to make Chinese goods more expensive, hoping to boost American-made products. Steel and aluminum, once economic backbones, were targeted for revival through tariffs. The message, America would no longer stand by while others took advantage. This was an economic war, not a military one. Tariffs were the chosen weapon. The administration believed US economic power would force China to concede. The goal, a new, more favorable trade deal for America. This decision sparked a conflict that would reshape economies worldwide. The US was confident, but the world was about to change in unexpected ways. The stage was set for a global economic showdown. America's promise, protect its industries and put itself first. The hope jobs would return and national security would strengthen. But the reality would prove far more complicated. The tariff war was about to test the limits of economic power, and its consequences would reach far beyond Washington and Beijing. Washington's plan seemed simple: impose tariffs, make Chinese goods pricier, and bring jobs home. Leaders promised tariffs would encourage companies to reshore manufacturing and push consumers to buy American. The idea, China would absorb the costs, and the US would collect billions in revenue. Tariffs rolled out in waves, starting with steel and aluminum, then expanding to thousands of products. Each new round was announced with confidence, promising short-term pain for long-term gain. The administration insisted this was essential to stand up to China's unfair practices. The ultimate goal forced China to negotiate and secure a better deal. US demands included ending forced technology transfers and better protection for intellectual property. The tariffs were leverage, America's main weapon to pressure Beijing. The promise, a historic agreement to fix the US-China economic relationship. But as the list of affected goods grew, so did the risks. The plan was bold, but the global economy is rarely simple. Tariffs were supposed to restore prosperity and manufacturing glory. Instead, they set off a chain reaction no one fully anticipated. The world was about to see if tough talk could deliver real results. The stakes were higher than anyone realized. The reality of tariffs hit American families and businesses hard. Instead of China paying, US importers and consumers bore the costs. Prices rose on everyday goods. American farmers suffered most. China, once their biggest customer, retaliated with tariffs on US crops. Soybean prices crashed as China turned to Brazil and Argentina. Generational farms faced bankruptcy as their largest market vanished. Manufacturers relying on Chinese parts saw costs soar, making it harder to compete. Some companies laid off workers or delayed expansion. Global supply chains were disrupted, causing uncertainty. The government rolled out billions in aid to farmers, but it was a bandage, not a cure. Farmers wanted trade, not subsidies. The aid program quietly admitted the tariff strategy was hurting key sectors. The promise of quick victory faded into a costly reality. The pain was widespread and the benefits were elusive. The trade war's true cost was becoming clear. China didn't back down. It hit back with its own tariffs, targeting US farmers and politically sensitive industries. Beijing's retaliation aimed to create pressure in America's heartland. But China also used the trade war to accelerate its own ambitions. Billions were invested in domestic tech, pushing for self-sufficiency in semiconductors and innovation. The Made in China 2025 plan gained urgency, making China less reliant on US technology. China expanded global ties, joining massive trade deals like the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. While the US built tariff walls, China built economic bridges. The trade war fueled Chinese nationalism, uniting the public behind the government. State media framed US tariffs as an attempt to block China's rise. Instead of division, external pressure rallied the nation. The dragon was not just awakened, it was more determined than ever. China's response reshaped its economy and global strategy. The US underestimated China's resilience. The conflict made China stronger, not weaker. The tariff war sent shockwaves through global trade. Companies rerouted supply chains to avoid tariffs, shifting production from China to countries like Vietnam and Mexico. Southeast Asia saw a surge in investment as factories relocated for tariff-free access to the US. Vietnam became a major manufacturing hub, but rapid growth strained its infrastructure. Supply chains couldn't move overnight. delays and quality issues followed. Many businesses adopted a China plus one strategy, diversifying but not abandoning China. The promised return of factories to America didn't happen. Jobs simply moved elsewhere. The US trade deficit persisted, just spread across more countries. The global map of commerce was redrawn, but the core imbalance remained. Winners and losers shifted, but the fundamental problem was unsolved. The world's supply chains became more complex and less predictable. The tariff war changed trade routes, not trade realities. The ripple effects were felt worldwide. The tariff war strained America's ties with its closest allies. Tariffs hit not just China but also the EU, Canada, and Japan, longtime partners. Allies felt betrayed, responding with their own tariffs on iconic US goods. The result: friction and a breakdown in cooperation. Instead of uniting against China's practices, the US and its allies fought each other. This division strengthened China's global position. Allies forged new trade deals like the EU-Japan agreement, acting independently of Washington. The US-led alliance system weakened, replaced by a more multipolar world. America's reliability as a global leader was questioned. The tariff war isolated the US from friends, not just rivals. Strategic bonds built over decades were tested. The world moved on, building new partnerships. America's America First policy came at a high diplomatic cost. By 2025, the tariff war's failures were clear. The US trade deficit with China shrank, but the overall deficit grew as imports shifted to other countries. The core issue, America consuming more than it produced, remained. The promised manufacturing renaissance never materialized. Jobs didn't return in large numbers. Tariffs raised costs for US businesses, hurting the industries they aimed to protect. Studies showed American consumers paid most of the tariff costs, not China. The government's tariff revenue was used to subsidize farmers hurt by retaliation. China didn't make the deep economic changes the US demanded. The Phase 1 deal left major issues unresolved. Instead, China doubled down on self-reliance and technological independence. Tariffs proved a blunt tool, unable to reshape the world's second-largest economy. The US faced higher costs and a more resilient competitor. The great backfire was undeniable. In 2025, the US faces a changed world. Many tariffs have been rolled back, quietly admitting the strategy failed. The global landscape is more fragmented, with new alliances often excluding America. Washington must rebuild trust with allies and work together on China policy. A united front is more effective than acting alone. The focus must shift from protectionism to innovation and investment at home. America needs a skilled workforce, modern infrastructure, and leadership in key technologies. The less and simple solutions to complex problems rarely work in a global economy. The US must adapt, invest, and collaborate to stay competitive. The tariff war is ending, but the challenge of defining America's role is just beginning. The choices made now will shape the nation's future. The world won't wait for America to catch up. The next chapter depends on what the US does next.